Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a brand new season of Kicking Match, a podcast which is all about the Irish League. And we're starting things off in style. It's the same thing we do every year. We're going to give you the complete rundown of the NFL Premiership team by team. And we're asking all the big questions. Which side won the transfer window this summer? Who are the most likely candidates to be flirting with the drop this year? And who are best set to be lifting that Gibson Cup come springtime. So may I advise you to buckle up as it's time for your ultimate guide to the Irish League season. And they've come back for the third year on the bounce to share their thoughts, feelings, emotions and bad texts all combined into a beautiful piece of audio. They are of course the boys from Around the Grounds NI. Hello Ross Welsh.
How are we, Peter?
Hello Joe McCallion.
Hello, Peter. Great to be back.
Fellas, I do feel like I say this every year, but how is it that we're back here once again? I know there's transfers and there's kit reveals and badge rebrands and everything else, but here we are. End of July, start of August. The Irish League is coming back this week. So much has changed, yet once again, nothing has changed.
And isn't that the way we like it? And I just can't wait to get back to it on Saturday now.
Can I say this? I think this year has been a particularly, can we say disappointing? It's been a damp squib, all right? Transfers have been muted, but perhaps that's the state of the Irish League in 2026. The feeling, the vibes overall, they aren't great. Once again, I feel like I'm back to the very first episode of Kick a Match. Europe was dreadful. It's just Groundhog Day all over again.
Massively so, isn't it? It just makes you feel like nothing's changed almost. We're just straight back into continuing last season again, and Europe barely even happened.
But people will think, here they go. They're going to talk about summer football or something else like that again. But that is the one thing that maybe could be the start of a change. Jared Lawler's coming in saying, okay, you know that vote that I was talking about like 2.5, 3 years ago? It's happening and it's happening soon. Is it timely, the fact that we've got a load of teams out of the umbrella? Perhaps. No more PIL. We have the Championship, we have the Women's League, we have the Men's League. But when it comes to the Men League, they are going to have a vote. Are we going to finally see summer football sorted or confirmed within the next few weeks?
Those European results went absolutely perfect for Jared, didn't they? He probably couldn't have hoped for better, while also not hoping for something like that for the league. But it goes hand in hand now with that conversation, and it does sort of boost a lot of things around that. I mean, you look at down south as well and how they do in Europe in comparison, there is a clear gap there. However, it is a bit more than summer football. Of course, that's a conversation to have, but the investment in the professionalism down south is a lot higher than it is here.
Ross, have we got to a point now where the arguments have been treaded over so much and it is a situation where it is a mystery door that we'd all be going through if there was to be some sort of change of schedule? Because we can't even talk about it as a summer schedule because it could be starting in any month of the year based on what's been discussed previously. But is one of the more stronger arguments, we've got to try something. Because attendances are flatlining or they're not progressing in the same way that they were a couple of years ago. As you mentioned, League of Ireland still is doing well in Europe. Are we at the point where we can go back and forward about pros and cons and maybes and what's not guaranteed and what could be guaranteed? But is the biggest thing that advocates of this change are probably going to be saying is, well, we can't just keep doing the same thing? Or is that not good enough?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an aspect of the league overall has sort of plateaued over the last few years, and that's maybe understandable after such a big burst that happened, especially in a couple of seasons after COVID. But it feels like there's no nuance to it anymore. Everybody's firmly entrenched in they either want to stay the way it is and there'll be no change in their mind, or they're dying for a summer schedule. So it feels like there's no middle ground anymore. Obviously this vote's coming and it's going to be, Ger Lawler said that the clubs will be the ones to decide. Now, it's all well and good having the vote, but then there has to be the contingency planning for, when do we make this change? How do you change from a summer season to then a winter season? Because you're going to have that fallow period. in terms of Europe, I think it's worth noting that I think Linfield and Glentoran were poor enough, and Larne are just being beat by Red Star, who are a far better team. So there's those aspects as well, not just summer football, but um, there's a big vote ahead, and then you have to wonder, are the championships teams getting a say, and then does that totally cut off the pyramid? But I feel like there needs to be more of an explanation of how it would work before there is a vote.
Here we go. 12 teams in a bowl. We pick them out. We share our thoughts, feelings, and we're probably going to know a lot of you. What's interesting about this, Ross Welch, is that still the most listened to podcast ever was last year's prediction podcast. And if this podcast was going to go and just finish today, one of the most infamous moments came from one of your predictions. Looking at how you've penciled out where each one of these 12 teams is going to finish, are you sitting there thinking, this could be Port's 12th all over again?
It will literally be Port's 12th all over again. Port it on, fans, stick
I
around.
can't. I just can't. Joe, this is hard this year.
Oh, absolutely, Peter. And I say that every year, but genuinely this year, I haven't a clue. I like it just keeps changing. I'm not letting myself change what I have now. So whatever order these teams come out in, I'm saying the position and we're sticking to it.
Okie dokie. Here's to pulling out Portadown first and getting everything underway in earnest. Number one. Hey, I'm glad we're starting off strong. It's the Glens. What a massive turnaround it was for those boys last year. They could have won the league title, lads. Could. They almost did. They didn't. But it wasn't all over by Christmas. They now go into this year with pretty much the same team, except they don't have the settled back line that they had last year. Cammy Palmer, after having the season of a lifetime, he's gone. Patrick Hubin, maybe he's finally gotten over Mr. Lynch and Derry and will stop scoring. But this is a much happier place than it has been in previous years. The question which you can genuinely ask and has been on people's lips, can they go and can they go one further and push for the title? Many will feel no, but look at what happened with Larne last year. This team is still very strong, one of the few full-time teams, and I know that people are going to say, if you actually look at it, yes, they've lost some big names, but would you have really said that they were going to be the star players last year? They haven't got all their recruitment down yet, but there's such a strong core. And with very few other teams having a total revolution, we should expect them to be right there, primed and ready to get Europe. But is that just a low floor when we're talking about expectations? What realistically can Glens fans hope for? Is it's the title until the embers of that thought are smushed out?
I think that's what Glentoran should be going into a season thinking that they want to go for a bit of a title tilt. Um, Europe has to be the bare minimum for Glentoran, I think, in much the same way it has to be the bare minimum for all four of the full-time teams. Obviously, at the minute, four into four fits, but if we lose this European place, four will not fit into three, and there's going to be a big.
Well, we're doing our best to make that happen, all right?
We're giving it a good go, but there's even more of an impetus to get Europe. For me, they'll just still be slightly outside of the title picture, but it seems like a real split fan base in terms of where they think they're going to go this year.
The thing for Glentoran, when you're touching on it there, Peter, about like last year, that it felt like they got past that sort of hoodoo that they have of comes to December and their season's over. It does start to set expectations high within their own fan base. And, as Ross was pointing to there, there's definitely a good section of them that are thinking, let's go and challenge for the league, or, at least put up an even better challenge than last year, which could just end up falling back to that old Glentoran style that we do see of falling apart compared to what the expectations are. I think, as you say, it's a fairly solid side. The core is pretty decent, remains the same as last year. I would worry about that back line compared to, with some of those players going. just in the defensive side is a bit more of a worry, and I don't think you can really challenge at the top unless you have a pretty solid defense.
For some reason, no one divided people quite like MJ Cancer Kamara, and we all knew that he was not going to return off the back of his loan. That is the folly of these loan players. Sometimes they break out and they're going to go. They do lose Cammy Palmer, but who really would have bet on him doing what he did last year and him doing it again, staying as injury free as he was last year? Danny Amos, I was higher on him than most people, but we move on. In comes, like, the one I like is Zeno Rossi. Like, he looked like a big rock at the back for them during Europe, but they really could do with another centre back, because what the Glens, and what maybe gets forgotten about, and it's like getting your Christmas presents early, is they did do a lot of reinforcement in January with Malone and Gallagher and Ross and O'Rourke. If you stuck those players alongside those new additions, you might feel a bit more boisterous about the Glens. But oftentimes it works better by them coming in January because they know the system and they've worked together. So I think people are being a bit more negative on the Glens when they really shouldn't be, when this is not a mediocre side the same way some people are suggesting.
It's certainly not, and it's a great point you're making there in terms of players coming in January. We saw that with the likes of Ives up in Coleraine. Didn't particularly look great when he moved in January, and then the next season he had a fantastic season. So it certainly could benefit them, that, and putting them beside the signings that they make could be a bit stronger. Certainly wouldn't be too negative on them, and we'll see that when we come to the actual predictions of where we have them in the league. I still think they'll have a great season, but there's certainly teams ahead of them, I think.
I I am fairly high on them. The negativity that's creeping into my mind is coming from Glentoran fans on social media. Now, I don't know if it's just a loud majority, but there's a lot, especially after the RFS games, have said, has Divine taken them as far as he can? I don't know if that's any slight on Divine. I just think I'm not sure how much further this Glentoran team can go. I just think there's such a clear two at the top of the league now. Any manager would find it hard to push into that, but his patience wearing a little thin for Divine. He hasn't won anything. I'm not sure.
Here's what I'll say. I don't think the Glens are as sexy as the likes of Corian and Larn when you're talking about new young talent breaking through. They maybe aren't as sexy as bringing in big names like especially Corian has with McMenamin and Cooper in years gone by. But in turn, they needed that stability. They've got it. They've got experience. And yeah, people are worrying about them at the back. I think where they looked like coming unstuck last year was more going forward. Because if it wasn't for Stewart turning it on, they got caught in the mud. If Hubin wasn't on form, stuck in the mud. If he was being nullified, they're in diffs. Yeah, you have Jenkins and he's a nice player to bring on, absolutely. But it's not close to the same firepower as particularly Coleraine. Actually, maybe the other full-time teams. It's probably on the lower end. It's good, but you can see them struggling on a random like bottom three team at home on a Saturday in the depths of winter. That is going to happen. It's going to be a panic. The best case scenario for the Glens is that they just do a real boring, consistent Larn. I think their floor is higher than it has been in ages, but that ceiling doesn't feel as wide and as high as it could be. I talked lots last year where I felt as though this team might be aging out, but there's still enough juice there across the team, and the older heads are Kane, Hubin, O'Rourke, Clark, right? There's still enough for a go this year. Is it absolute title tilt, as you put it, Ross? I think it's hard to say that. I think Divine out, based on what we've currently seen, who's coming in? Lynch?
I agree.
Like,
I think that's crazy. Crazy talk.
they they are a slight level above in finances and recruitment. Maybe I'm totally wrong there, but they have a really great and solid Irish League side. Now, it feels like a bit of a waste when you turn up and do what you did against RFS, but RFS is a hard team, all right? Like that was a tough draw, and we'll get on the Coleraine. They had a tough draw. Linfield, we'll get onto that as well. Let's start talking about really what would be a bad season for them. Is it fourth? Everything below fourth is a disaster. Fourth, third, and fourth's fine. Second and first is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty fair way to say it. I mean, as Ross said at the start, Europe, it just has to be Europe. They can't be finishing outside of that. Even if they're outside of that and winning a cup or something, it's still a poor season because they have to be competing in Europe with the amount of money they have being full time. The other teams around them not really strengthening too much in terms of the teams below. If they start to fall away down that table, it is a bad season. Um, I kind of only really have them in one place, maybe just below, and if it's not either of those two positions, I think it probably is a bad season.
It's strange because they finished third last year, but they could have very easily been first based on one or two results. So if you were to put them there, for example, there's a big difference between finishing third and potentially being a penalty away from winning it all in the last game, and finishing third and you're 10 points off second with 7 games to go. Like, it's a very different feel. I'll go first. I have them third this year.
I also have them third.
Me as well, third place.
Wow, third all round. I think people might be surprised by that, but they're probably also thinking, that means that they think they're better than this, better than that. My big worry for the Glens, and I can't foresee this, is that they get totally caught up during the winter months, and it's a case of them passing around these teams very nicely, very easily, but not being able to break them down. And then every time they play against one of the other top four sides, it's draws. It's like Linfield a couple of years ago. That probably won't happen, but I think it's the team I worry about from an attacking sense the most. Third all round, bad is anything below fourth. Like, I don't think fourth's bad.
Yeah.
It's
frustrating.
Four's fine. I think they could maybe do with winning a trophy,
I
but
agree.
it's not gonna make or break
Yeah,
your
that
season.
was my point.
There's got to be plenty of handshakes here. I think League Cup in third, and maybe a nice young gem coming through. Oh, a player we never heard of. That'll be pretty nice for the Glens all around. So, surprises Glentoran, but I don't see this being a crisis season, he famously said. Okay, next up. Okay, a team who knows very little about crisis, but can they repeat the trick once again? They've done it for the past 2 years. Back-to-back top 6 finishes. Who called that a couple of years ago? Getting to the Irish Cup final 2 years in a row. This has been a rather rosy patch in Swift's history, but is that about to come to an end? Nobody gets more excited to talk about Rodney McAree, but let's be real here. He is not on the pitch. We can talk about his tactics and his wonderful triangles and all that type of stuff until the cows come home, but he has to get players on the pitch to do that. And I do have concerns. I think I talked about it around the tail end of last year. I feel like this team is starting to creak. But is it still better than a majority of other Irish League teams?
I agree. Insert a clip from this time last year, probably where we're talking about Alves and Bucaramana, or another year older. They haven't really lost anyone. The only one I could really think of was James Knowles, is retired, but he wasn't really in and around the starting 11 as much by the end. The names they've brought in, Jamie Glacken, nice wee piece to have. Barney McKeown will shore things up. It's very much a case of as you were from last year, but everybody else has sort of moved on, time included.
Glacken's a nice piece. It's the type of player
I
they've maybe missed. Like, I would say maybe the Swifts are like one extra attacking addition away from maybe being a bit higher for me. And maybe that might come, and we'll talk about the rumours. But it's that back line. I know Marin wasn't pulling up trees for them. He's more of a name factor than he was a contributor at the level that his name had been at. But we even saw at the start of last year they were winless for a while. This back line has started to leak.
It definitely has, and that like the Ross's point on not really changing too much from last year. I personally don't really think they need to too much. The defense is clearly something that needs addressed, and maybe McKeown will be able to help out there. But for me, if that start of the season had went better last year, which I think was a bit of a European issue, I think they would have had a great season, finished a lot higher. Um, for me, Rodney's probably the best manager in the league. I think with that group of players and the addition of the likes of Glacken, I don't think there's a need to switch up that team too much or refresh it right now. It's probably more you need to get youth in and bleed them for the next coming years. But even then, like you look at that squad, there is the odd old player, obviously, like Leo Alves and Biggie's getting a wee bit older, but you still have the likes of Glennie and stuff, who's only 24. And for me, probably they're
You could
still their
argue
best
that
player.
they could become a bit of a glass cannon. Like, is Mitchell going to be healthy this year? They really needed Junior for that small stretch. I think Galvin was a big loss. Shame he is out of Irish League football altogether now. But Glacken, he'll do some damage, particularly against bottom six sides. You have that nice little base of, yeah, look, there's no doubt Alves and Bigorama aren't the same. All right. And I think you actually had actively quiet games from them compared to previous years, but that's all right. They still have Dylan and others. McAllister's another big attacking threat. You add in another striker, let's say, from another team, let's say a Benji McGee, that is a different prospect. And they might get diffed one day by a Larn at home, and they might huff and puff and get beat by the bottom side in the league at home, or struggle away against another equal team for sure. But I don't think they're going to be relegation fodder. I don't think they're going to drop down that farther. Do you think they're going to drop down at all, Ross?
I think they're going to drop down a little bit. There'll be a bit of a regression to the mean. And I'll give you a wee stat as to why I'm thinking that. From Valentine's Day to the end of the season, they won one game.
Exactly. No,
That's
they got to the cup final. That was handy.
yeah, yeah, fair play. But that's not great. And they were leaking goals towards the end of the season. Now, obviously, all eyes were on the cup final. And Lauren won a victory procession for that 8-0. But there's a bit to be said for momentum. And, Linfield, who couldn't beat their way out of a paper bag towards the end of last season, beat them handily in that playoff final. So I don't know. I don't. They're obviously not going to be relegation fodder, but I think there'll be a bit of a slide down the table.
Is being outside the top six for a majority of the season a bad season for Dungannon?
No way. Take out the last 2 years, and that's even like a ridiculous thought that Dungannon have to be in the top six. They're just because they did it twice in a row, top six and cup final. That's still ridiculous overachievement. 2 years in a row. If they come seventh or eighth, that's totally fine, especially compared to the seasons before that when they were in relegation scraps and relegation playoffs. I think there has to be a bit of an allowance for things that go back to the way they were a little bit.
At what point does that change though? Because like you need to be progressing as a team. As I say, I think they have probably the best manager in the league. To get to the Irish Cup final, win it one year, final the next. Like, at what point do you just stop saying, yeah, they can fall back out of the top six again? Like, I think they've signed quite well. For me, I think it would be quite disappointing if they don't finish in the top six.
Really?
Maybe not disappointing. Like, I think as a fan, you would be disappointed if they're not in the top six. I don't think it would be a huge surprise, but like, you'd want to be pushing on.
I just don't think
I
there's.
like if they finish seventh or eighth, I don't think it's an absolute failure. Anything lower than that, obviously, then you're starting to ask questions. But that middle part of the table can be tight. But for me, like you've done it 2 years. I don't think there should just be an acceptance of, yeah, you can just fall back out again. Because what was the point in the last two
But
years?
I just don't think there's anywhere to push on to. They're not going to break into that top four. Cliftonville probably have a much bigger budget, much bigger support. I think it's unfair to expect them to be finishing consistently above Cliftonville. And now Ballymena are, they may as well be a full-time team with the way they're recruiting and paying players. So I think I just think they've hit their ceiling, and you can't continue to outdo the numbers over and over again. It'll catch up with you. And you can't just get to the Irish Cup final every year, as nice as that would be. But I just think a little bit of a drop off has to be expected at some point. And maybe they'll prove me wrong, but it has to happen at some point.
I can hear the Mick McCarthy meme ringing out my ears. I can't, but they can. I don't have them in the top six. Either you boys do.
No,
I think
obviously based off that, neither do I.
I'm clearly the high man on this one. I do.
Wow, we're
I have them in fifth.
fifth.
Yep. Yep.
Best of the rest once
When
again.
it comes to explaining the rest of the team, as in the other probably two, maybe three teams that should be competing for that position, that might make a bit more sense. But yeah, I have them fifth.
Look, no one has been on the Dungannon hype train quite like me. I feel as though I was an early adopter on them being frisky, and as you said there, Ross, like them slightly declining is not a surprise based on what we've seen in 2026. However, I'm just struggling to really stick a pin in it of where that slide stops. I may regret this, but I have them in ninth.
Wow.
I
Wow.
think I think they may struggle at times with some big players with health. Maybe what I'm slightly worried about is that they can recruit. Where if they fall through, they'll get those slightly unsexy gems that will just help solidify them. That that particularly centre back pair or three, whatever they decide to do, it has been a pair for a long time. Can Barney McKeown do it again? I don't think he will. But it's not a really thrilling bunch of Wallace, McGuire, McKeown, etc. So, look, they can be seventh all year, and then just happens the last few games they drop down to ninth. Ninth sounds harsher than I think it is when you look at the actual table.
Yeah.
I'll have to live with that. I was going to change it, but I'm not. Swiss
I
knife.
agree. Sort of that little cluster at the top of the bottom six, you can sort of plonk them anywhere. I've went seventh, but that is very dependent on them getting a tune and keeping on the pitch, uh, McAllister and Mitchell up top. If not,
But that's what you have to factor in here.
this is it. This is it. The, but that's the risk. I'm playing at the poker table. I'm all in on Dungannon, but only up to the point of seventh.
If you're all in, what am I? My God, I've put everything
You
on it.
really think Benji McGee's going?
I well, like
I want a little extra. If Benji McGee's sitting there playing all year, stick them seventh for me. But at the minute, I have ninth. But look, we have other teams to talk about. Let's dive in. To be honest, I have one sitting in my hand here already. I just need to read it out now. Oh, I think people are looking forward to us talking about these lot. Crusaders. There was potential legal threats. What's happening with like all the players that they say they're going to sign? I think Glenavon playing against Crusaders in a preseason friendly was just hilarious. But we look at a team who, realistically, they did their best to go down and secured safety from the jaws of relegation on numerous occasions. And they go into this season as a top flight team with pretty much the same side, a few additions, but they're going to have to try and do it all over again without the guy who scored pretty much all their goals. And yeah, I'm not saying everybody was having a party for Debaga's performances, but he seemed solid at times and did help them in big games. What track record do we have to suggest that this year is going to be the year where it all comes together for the Crews? They are, of course, not the title threat that they used to be, but we're really starting to get used to them down near the bottom of the table, and I think we're in shake my hand for 10th territory with this team. It's sticking another kid on them, and I don't think people are trying to squint and trying to believe that they could be something more. You can name me players and say that they're talented, but maybe on one or two occasions, I rarely saw it all coming together. And it should have been talked about more last year. Declan Cadell is probably the man with the most to prove from a managerial point of view this year.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a case of who else is out there, but I think he is quite lucky to have been given another year. Like you talk about those two leaving, Bryden and Debaga. For me, they were probably two of their best players, or two of the players that they really relied on. You know, Debaga, even in the playoff, was huge for them and probably saved them in a sense. Looking at some of the other decent players they have, Sturdy Nixon and Thorndyke. For me, Thorndyke is he's a good player, but he's a luxury player. I don't think he's going to really fight for you with, and that's what they need this year. Shake your hand for 10th is absolutely. It's going to be a really tough season for them. I just don't think there's any real notable players in that squad, and certainly not in the signings either.
One of the big things that people aren't really realizing as well, Jordan Forsyth away, he was
Totally agree.
a bit of steel and a bit of leadership in the middle of the park. As cliche as it is, a proper cruise man knows what it is, the fight for the badge and all that. And now it kind of just feels like it's a lot of blow-ins who are probably being paid more than they would be paid at teams around them in the league. I don't know how they ended up staying up last year because Glenavon were sniffing around, and then I don't know how they escaped that playoff.
It's like they survived because Glenavon had their chance and then totally capitulated. Anna had their chance and then totally capitulated. It's like Crusaders just stood there as other teams around them fell away. So let's not take all the credit away from the Crews. They galvanised in the big moments. They saw it out. Nobody got more angry at me this summer for some reason than Crews fans. Look, I'm the guy that predicted you were going to win the league a couple of years ago. All right. Yes, I was right about your downfall last year. But this is what happens. All right. You come up, you go down. I don't think they are going to finish 12th. Let's start with that. Do either of you guys have them as 12th?
No, that's too far for me.
I don't.
So let's build ourselves up from there. Why do you not think that they're going to finish 12th? What is it about this team that says, because it's very competitive this year, that you think they're going to get more points than other teams? Because I think that's where we're starting off with.
See, I'm not convincing myself. If they were in a different kit analogy, if this team had come up from the championship and we're called Limavady United, you'd say they're probably going straight back down. Now, there's the aspect they've all had time in the league and they've maybe got a couple more of your flair players, but there, no doubt about it, they're in a proper relegation scrap. I just think they will have enough nous and they've been there, done it last year to pull away from it.
How they start this league is vitally important, because I felt as though last year, because they were behind the eight ball for a long time, they went into every game nervous and unsure of themselves. If they're able to get a couple of wins, let's say 3 within the first 10, they probably won't feel as much jitters as they did previously. You might also say another year and another year working with each other, an extra bit of fluidity should come into this side. There is talent. There might be no Fraser Bryden, but I wasn't jumping up and down and saying, if they lose him, how will they ever survive? Brooks could finally find his scoring boots. You have, as you said, Thorndyke there. We all quite like Nixon. But we all agree that Clark and O'Rourke was a big loss. You still have Weir. Forsyth, he would play at the back. He would play in midfield. He really was a leader there. They were trouble. And I've got them 11th.
I've got them 10th.
I also have them 11th.
What I will say, their first five are a bit of a nightmare. They're away to Cliftonville, the Glens, and Coleraine, and they're at home to Ballymena and Portadown. Now, if Ballymena are going to be the team they want to be, that's four stinking games. And then, Portadown, if Portadown want to have any sort of season, they need to be beating Crusaders. So that could be a real bleak start. So you have to look at it as this is a free hit, and if we get any points at all, happy days. There needs to be maybe a bit of patience with Cadell there. Overall, I'd say he's probably on relatively thin ice, but that's a tricky start, and if that carries on, he could be staring down the barrel pretty soon.
I don't know what the answer is if they decide to change things, but that's a topic of discussion we've had numerous times. It's tough.
They've
Like,
they've already done the recruit from within thing, and then who is actually out there these days? Do you go back to Stuart King and Gary Hamilton are getting linked with every job? Matthew Tipton, he's been out of the game for ages, so they're sort of up a creek without a paddle at this point. It needs to work.
we move across North Belfast, Cliftonville. Tell you what, there was no trophies last year, but can I say this, Joe? I'm very happy to award you Away Kit of the Year 2026-2027.
Thank
Congratulations.
you very much.
But looking ahead, beyond just kits, we're here again. Let's just repeat what we were talking about 2 years ago. Confusion. Where's Cliftonville going? Big star players, another year older. A lot of hope on players that haven't really proven it within the league. This feels like a slight, fleet-footed team that can play pretty football but can often get bullied out of games. It could all change in the middle and finances comes in and we see a totally different side, but we have to base our assessment on where we think Cliftonville are going to be from the squad that they have. They have a great manager. Magilton has been able to make miracles happen, pull rabbits out of a hat, but is his luck running out?
I think you could just clip last season talking about Cliftonville in the preseason and it would be exactly the same, right down to the Toronto investment. It would be identical. I'm not feeling confident whatsoever after how last season went, and some of the departures, in particular, Johnny Addis is huge. I think
I
that's
agree. It's not being talked about enough.
it's a huge loss, and it really worries me because not only just did he tighten up that backline so much, he was a clear leader in that team. And without that, and with, as you say, other players getting older, more injuries creeping in, not playing so often, that is such a young squad. Magilton and Skin are both brilliant, but if you don't, I mean, I have no huge confidence that we're gonna better from last year.
I know sometimes, Ross, in this podcast, you guys are more down on your own team than other people, but it's hard to disagree with Joe here. There is Irish League talent in this squad. Like, I think they are better than a Cruise, for example, and they're more primed and ready to do bits in this league. But we saw massive weaknesses last year getting exposed by other teams with the Reds. And there's areas, particularly right at the top and right at the back, that hasn't been answered. And fundamentally, this is a weaker squad than last year.
It definitely is when you look at the names that have gone out, even in terms of the depth they were providing and the players they had on loan last season that went back to their clubs. Threadbare is the word for this squad. And again, we're like a broken record. How are they dependent on Joe Gormley to lead the line for yet another year? I don't know what age he is. He must be late
He's
30s now. Like,
he's
uh,
36.
he's 36. There you go.
Now, in all fairness, he's a cameo player.
Yeah, no, for sure. But who else is up front then?
Well, you've got Curran about there. You have a young talent people are excited about with Healy. Campbell, Reese Campbell played pretty much no part of last season. It was the first game of the season where he got crocked. So that's a real talent. And people can get excited about McStravick and Sheridan.
Hawthorne. young
Yeah,
player,
but
but
but, the,
like
but these are young
These
players,
are
and
yeah,
but have struggled from a frame point of view.
this is what it comes back. Like you start to look at who becomes the experienced players in there, and with Addis going, you expect the likes of Sean Leopard to stand up, who like he's 26, but he feels younger when he's on the pitch. Now he had some great games last year, but is he going to be solid enough for the whole season? I don't know if he will be.
I don't know if in previous years Cliftonville will be looking at some of the performances of
Exactly,
Sean Leopard and be saying he's the guy.
exactly.
I so I think you have high points you can, but let's be real, we've have some difficult moments along the way. You kind of look at it and go, "Ooh, might be a big year for players like Conlon and Fapatu."
Yeah, yeah, it certainly could. And the likes of Harry Wilson last year as well, who I think our player of the season, players player of the season as well. I think he could massively kick on and help. Clearly, I mean, Jim's not an idiot. He's gone out and he's got a couple of defensive players. The issue is you don't know too much about them, Scottish Championship and stuff. Now, in the past, it's worked for him. Can it work again? I don't know. And will they be strong enough to build a solid spine in that team? It's just so hard to tell at this point.
Yeah, you have seen these players work out. We're talking about Ollie Samuels coming in from Middlesbrough, Alex Bannon from Burton, Dean McMaster from Airdrie. Like, yeah. But then you kind of go, right, you also have Aaron Whiteman to beef out the team, who was injured all last year. Ben Quinn, who was like a sub player for Portadown. Joel Thompson, who is young, but in and out of that Ballymena side. It's just not what Cliftonville would do. And it's also not really a squad that you're looking at. And yeah, we've talked about how everything below fourth could be a bit of a crapshoot. Are Cliftonville a top six side this season? We know what that used to mean and what that is now are very different things. But do you really feel as though they are better than six other sides and that throughout the season they're going to outscore, be stingy at the back than six other teams? I know I've got egg in my face this before. I don't think so.
It could be red tinted glasses for me. I do still think we are, but it is massively down to some young players really carrying the side, which is a lot they ask, in the Irish League as well. I think we'll not be consistent for sure, definitely not be consistent, but I think there's enough there. There's enough there that I could see us ending up in the top six at the end.
Is he mad, Ross?
No, I think, well, yes, he is, but for other reasons. But I think the will come top six, but I'm basing that on the name. You know what I mean? Teams going to Cliftonville.
Come on, we've been here before.
We'll have like 5 minutes ago, but but the teams will go to Solitude, and Solitude, if they're to have any joy this year, Solitude has to be the fortress that it can be. The I don't know.
What, back in 2016? Come on. When has Solitude been a fortress?
I'm going off the two worst Sundays of all time, where Linfield picked up 1 point
That's
across
true.
those two pictures. But I just think they do it because it's Cliftonville, and I know that that is not formed on facts or statistics, but I just think teams will play differently against Cliftonville because of the name Cliftonville.
Ross, spit it out.
I've got them sixth.
I also have them sixth.
Eighth.
Whew.
I think maybe the Canadian money is going to make me look very foolish here.
Well,
But when Cliftonville were in the weeds, they were in the weeds. And I think other teams are more frisky. This is a team that's less experienced and also longer in the tooth at the top end. Hale is a player that I think anybody outside of the top four would adore. But is he going to get the minutes to influence them in the way that he wants? You could also say to me that Hawthorne and Sheridan and Fapatu are really going to push forward. And they maybe could be anywhere between eighth and I'd say sixth, maybe. But whatever way it works out, I just think I'll be kicking myself next year saying I was betting against the badge opposed to the team. Magilton's great, but this is a team who is really relying on a load of these players who have never heard of. Add in Dan O'Connor from AFC Tottenham coming through. But they've done that. Look at
Yep.
Keeney last year, but then as soon as you lose him, trouble. Okay, so there's my tweets going big. Okay, Limavady, come on down. Welcome to the podcast. Weird that we're not talking about Glenavon this year, but it's another team in blue coming to our top flight. Like, it's hard to talk about Limavady this year without talking about Bangor, Loughgall, Newry, to a lesser extent Portadown in previous years. These teams coming up with a bit of momentum have continued it when they get into the top flight. However, it's very important they do that early. I think a big early move, and maybe I've got this totally wrong, is the fact that they are going to play games at the Limavady Showgrounds. But will all this experience that they have brought in, and I think a lot of people have been quite impressed by their moves. They've been a massive beneficiary of this new base up towards the northwest. Like, they've got some players who are happy to still be based around there and have previous with teams like Coleraine and Derry and a lesser extent Ballymena. This is like an RC team to me.
I think once you actually look into it, I think this is not a bad team. Initially, I was quite down on them. I thought there's not much there, but they've got some real nice players up top. They've got the experience coming in. As you say, there's the Northwest factor. They'll continue to pick up players all through the year. Once the League of Ireland season finishes, they'll pick up a few. I think they could be all right, you know.
I agree. John Butcher is clearly a good player. I think they did quite well to hold on to him, and I think he will be huge for them, obviously. The experience that they added to that squad, and as you say, Peter, what we've seen in the past with teams coming up, I'm not necessarily worried about them. I think there will be a bit of a thing of a lot of Irish League fans not really knowing too much about them with them being up the Northwest, so there'll be a bit of a what are they going to be like sort of thing. But I'm looking forward to seeing them, and I think they'll be okay.
So we've got, yeah, he was at Glenavon last year. Sean Carlin, talented young player. You can get stuck in, ain't too bad at passing the ball. Aaron Jarvis, he's going to beef up that team. Loads of experience. Stephen O'Donnell, we've seen what experience can do, particularly in that area of the pitch. Donny Lafferty, once again, experience, top end of football. Ronan Wilson's a nice piece from the Welders. Oisin Duffy, I can't say I know too much about him, but he's a nice young piece that could maybe break out. Just nice to have, particularly a bit of pace there. Even like Mikhail Kennedy, like it's just these are players that help beef out a squad and have a bit of experience, and then you add on to the Lorries, add on to Butcher and players like that. I think if you compare them to Bangor and particularly Loughgall in previous years, they're similar, if not a wee bit better. But in turn, they still have to play the games that are in front of them. I expected to have probably a very similar rollout to how Bangor got on with things. They will rely on teams having to travel, which sounds ridiculous in real football terms, having to travel up to Limavady, try and shut things down, and use some of their bigger players, that guile, to try and sneak draws and get victories. And across the board, you expect them to do that. But will it be enough for safety? Like, that's the only goal. There's no way getting into good season, bad season. It's probably a handshake at 11th. Do you think come this time next year, we're talking about them as a top flight team again?
I could see it. I think they will have enough going forward. They are capable of a result against the big teams. You know, they've put Linfield and Larne out of the last two Irish Cups. Obviously, those are,
They're beating Glens at home this season, aren't they?
I would love that. I would love that a lot. But you're right in what you say. It's far away from everywhere. It's worth a trip. I was there for they played the Blues in a friendly, well organized team. Not a huge deal going forward, probably against those bigger teams, but that's not what they'll be there to do. They'll be there to grind out a point if they can. and try to hit the magic mark of 34 or whatever the average is. And I could well see them doing it. I think the teams around them they'll pick up a few points, so why not?
I do think up top, that's the area. Like they're repeating the banger trick, aren't they? Even getting a big result against a big team like they did with the Blues in the Irish Cup. But they don't have a Ben Arthurs, and it would be nice to have a, let's say, an Aaron Jarvis style when it comes to experience in the league forward player. How much juice is in the Laurie brothers? We'll have to see. I don't expect to be playing 90 minutes each week. He famously said, but every team's looking for strikers. And if Limavady are really going to struggle this year, that could be where they're missing out on. But they're also exactly the type of team who's probably knocking on the door of every one of those big teams saying, any chance you could loan us such and such, and hopefully they break through. But when it comes to recruitment, as a team coming up to the top flight, it's 4.5, 5 stars.
Yeah, I think so. I think that
It's not Joe Cooper, but it's a nice way to build
he's
it.
moving closer to Limavady though, isn't he? He's making that move, so you never know. I think the recruitment is, as you say, four and a half. It's exactly what they need. They'll probably have a shift in how they play football, which that experience will be exactly what they need for that shift. They will need to be a bit more tight at the back, a bit more reserved, maybe, which isn't probably going to be the prettiest to watch. But as you say, the goal is staying up. It doesn't matter how they do it.
And I guarantee you, every team above 10th is going to go, that Leon Boyd player is a bit nippy. It's good. That's going to be the guy they're all going to say outside of Butcher, because all the hipsters are all over Butcher already. Okay, if Crews are 11th, Limavadi's 10th.
Same for me.
I really wanted to. I've got them 11th.
I think that's fair. I
Yeah,
think Cruz Limavady, maybe another team. I think they're maybe interchangeable. And as we saw last year, it can be quite close. They will be more difficult to break down, and we'll probably get more of those draws along the way. Every draw will be a victory for them, as it was for Bangor. But yeah, you do worry about goals.
I was just about to say I love the attackers. John Butcher,
Yes.
Barry Flynn is fuming somewhere that you're and John Butcher isn't going to score hatfuls next year. Every time, every week on Sports Sound, he was all over him. And what I will say, there's a new contender for best Irish League chip in town. Sensational. Get genuinely lovely setup, great people.
Uh,
Get up
I
Wow.
and
will
try the
allow it for
chips.
now, but less of this burger chip fan banter. It's not 2012. Okay, I think one of the big calls there, maybe Limavady will break the streak and they'll fall away, but it's on the break. They'll be sitting deep and they'll try and get you on the break, and they are going to be a thorn in the side for plenty of teams in and around them. We go from one L team to another big hitter. I'm surprised they've been staying out of my grasp. Ross Welsh, Linfield, the floor is yours. I know every year we go into this saying disharmony at Windsor Park. Fans are saying this is the worst Linfield team of all time. Clearly, that's not the case. But my goodness, is it just grey clouds in South Belfast slash Lisburn at all times at the minute?
It certainly feels that way. Where do you start? Where do you want me to start? Because
Europe, that was horrendous.
it was, yeah, it was really, really bad actually. Should have beat that team home and away. Never mind losing the first leg and then the second leg. Oh my goodness me! Like, there's been some stinking European nights these past few years following Linfield. That was one of, if not the worst. That it was. I don't know. I don't know where to even go with that. It just you should be beating that team home and away easily. 10 men or not, and they throw it away like that at the very end. Great strike, don't get me wrong, but it should have been cleared. We shouldn't even been in the position to be holding on for extra time against a team of Estonians, like brutal, change,
Unlucky to get the red card, I think, though.
unlucky, but also like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Let him have the shot. If he scores, fine. Absolute brain fart moment from McGee, who's one of the best players, obviously. but just stupid. And then I don't know. Like there's now talk of there's now no money for full-time football, so we're going back to part-time. Has
They're
full-time
so
football?
public about this. This is what's really strange is
It's
that
bonkers.
it
Why?
used to
Like
be this like open whisper. It's talked about here or there, and now we're at the point where it just never goes away. It's like it's constantly being talked about how, oh, we don't know if we're going to be full time anymore. It's like a slow drip now. It's not even a this is a potential reality. It's like we're all slowly accepting this is the eventual place we're all going here.
the
It's the
chairman
destination
has
of travel.
the chairman has come out and done interviews and said there's money for 2 years of full-time football, or we need to win the league and advance well in Europe. Neither, certainly not advance well in Europe. I would say we're definitely not winning the league this year. So Tuesday and Thursday nights at Midgley Park, we're making a comeback. But I don't know, the way the whole club's backwards at the minute. Every part of it, the board, the squad, the dugout, the support, the whole atmosphere around the place stinks. Probably not helped by guys coming on podcasts and slating the whole thing, but it's just no good.
Is a lack of leadership in that it just feels like a lot of people in senior positions pointing fingers and also saying it's tough. It is tough, right? Other teams are investing big, though. You're having to try and find your way through all of this. You don't have the same kind of, well, you claim not to have the same kind of cash at your disposal. It's like we're slightly behind the eight ball, so we're not going to try anymore. That's the feeling I'm getting from an outsider.
That's exactly it. The white flag's being flown. The first sign of any competition to the Irish League dominance that Linfield had for decades in Lorne and Coleraine, and they've just went, we'll try to maybe wait this out and hope their money runs out, and we'll go back to being big bad Linfield on a part-time basis, which is stupid. So we're
But
just
look,
going to sit and
maybe they're right. Maybe they'll be the team that looks smart while every other team's going bust. They're sitting there picking up players nicely. Like this has been a bit of a long walk from a couple of years ago. Recruitment's never truly excelled. It's the topic we always bring up, and it's like a club where no one wants to be there. No one's happy to be there. Why is that the case? They have the opportunity to be the biggest club on this island.
if you go back to the early 2000s, 2010s, and you said to someone, Linfield won't even be in the top three in the Irish League, you'd have been laughed out of the place because they were the biggest club on the island back then, and they should have pushed on. And I said it on the podcast me and Mark did with you that Linfield should have been like TNS in Wales and dominated, and people got the wrong end of the stick and thought I was saying that Linfield deserve that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they should have, from the position they were in, made hay while the sun shine and progressed, but they haven't, and they've sat in their laurels, and now they're staring down the barrel of what is an abject failure and embarrassment that we're going to have to walk back full-time football from being the biggest club in the country. So I don't know. I don't know. They're not doing full-time football properly. Maybe there's the argument you go back to part-time, but you're still paying the same money. So I
That is the
yeah,
thing. Like we've seen that actually what a quote unquote full time wage is.
you'll go and you'll turn into a Cliftonville who are still a big team, but are not going to compete for the league for probably decades, realistically.
This particularly feels like fans are at their wits' end, and the season hasn't even begun. Like one European nightmare cannot be a season defining result.
No, it can't, but like it is so much bigger than that European. Like the decision makers in the board in that club are like Japanese knotweed. Like it is just such a big issue, and it has been for years. That it seems like they're just constantly making the wrong decisions, and as you say, they're almost coming out like I feel sorry for us. We don't have any money. you were in the position and you let the other clubs catch up on you. Really, as Ross said, should have been like TNS and got away from it all. So you can't blame the fans whatsoever at this point. There is just, I don't think I've ever seen it. Like I've joked many times in this podcast, Linfield, a toxic club at times, especially in Windsor Park. It is awful at the moment, to the point where why would you want to be David Healy? Why would you want to be the players on the pitch? If you're a Linfield fan, why do you even want to go to the matches? Because it is awful. It is a really, really bad watch. I said to Ross at that European game, this is maybe one of the first years, like we talked about Cliftonville and my aspirations for them. It's one of the first years that I am really not worried about playing them, because it is just, it doesn't feel like they have a killer instinct anymore. It doesn't feel like they have any sort of impotence about them. It's just a weak squad, a weak team, and almost a weak club now.
Okay, stop the world here for 1 second. Like, I still think they have maybe the best duo up front with Fitzpatrick and Offord. Let's all remember the call last year. If Offord's player of the year, Linfield win the league. That was a potential option. And I think if he can get a good run on it and be fit, he is going to be the spark and the real true excitement to light up Windsor time and time again. This is a team which has a spine of really solid professional players who don't seem slight. They look like they're built well. Does it lack a bit of fire? Sure. But who says you need that across 38 games? All you need to do is win what's in front of you. And I think looking ahead to what the season's going to be like, particularly with Fitzpatrick and Alford, I think they're going to just, particularly at home, push to the side, Portadown, Carrick, Bangor, Lima Valley. That won't be the issue. And they're probably more built to deal with that nip and tuck kind of game against Larne. But if you do look at this squad as well, they didn't do well in Europe when the pressure was on. And it's hard to say, what's this 11? What's your best 11? And how do they take these steps forward? Like, is the 11 we have right now going to be the one that ends the season? Obviously, they rarely do. But it just doesn't seem thrilling. It's like 8 of the same style and type of players, and then you've got 2 forwards who can do bits.
But even on Offord and Fitzy, completely agree. 2 fantastic players. Unless I'm being stupid here and there was some sort of injury, he didn't start Offord in that home game in Europe. He brought him on. He was a good player when he came on. But it comes back to Linfield players talking about David Healy. He's so defensive. He almost doesn't want to play those 2 together, it feels like, when it clearly is. I agree with you. I think they would be fantastic together, playing it every week, providing there's no injuries. But
Yeah,
Ross, I'll let you take over
the
the.
two playing the two of them together is the obvious shout, and I think linked up well in the second half of the European game. But like one of them standing over here, another one standing 30 yards away on the other side of the pitch. You gotta get close together.
Well, who
But
links
right,
up?
so then he
Like,
tries to play Miller in like this free role. And it's just play him on the wing and let him put the ball in the box where Fitzy, one of the better headers of the ball in the league, can either score with a header or knock it down to Kieran Offord, one of the best finishers in the league. And I don't know, like, am I being stupid? Am I being naive that this is too easy of an option to do? I don't know. But hear me out on this one. I think the starting 11 is more than capable of competing for a league title. But unfortunately, there's nothing on the bench, and one injury
that
we
is an
are
issue.
beyond snookered. People were dead on their feet in that European game, and Healy obviously doesn't feel confident enough in the subs that he has had a hand in recruiting and bringing into the club, by the way, to bring them on. I think he made 2 subs at half time in that game, and I don't know.
Are you expecting a late flurry? Because outside of just overall talent, you've lost bodies. McKee, Walsh, Allen, even people like Whiteside, Archer. They happen to go to the same
Well,
team,
the
but
talk is McGee
like
and
like
Offord
that.
are Shelburne are sniffing around him. And if they go, then good night, Irene, because I would say they're the two best players in the team. And then what is the point if we're going into the season without them two? I was promised by the manager that there would be quantity over quality, or sorry, quality over quantity of signings. There's been neither so far, and that's going by Healy's standards because he won't play them.
Okay, so you've got
Really
Ryan Nolan, who
like Ryan
is a
Nolan.
centre back
Good signing.
with okay, right, bit of experience there, probably
Yep.
underrated player within the league. Kobe Murr, like on and off for Dungannon when he was getting a loan, but he does have a bit of pedigree from youth setup. He's got a bit of height. I don't expect him to be starting games, but he is almost like your Ethan
Yep.
Devine type player. I can't tell you anything about Wells or Galvin, but it's once again us sitting around going, it'd be nice to have a winger, and is your centre midfield, fingers crossed, like Shields and one other being healthy.
It's praying that you can keep two of Shields, McLean, and Mulgrew fit enough to swap about them throughout the season. Healy at the AGM said basically if there's 3 games in a week, Kyle McLean can only do two of them. And he's meant to be the fittest of the midfielders, and we're managing his minutes. We're obviously managing the other two's minutes. Isaac Bird, I think, showed flashes last season. A lot of people don't think that at all, but we'll let a lot of like good squad players go, and now there's just nothing going on really.
It feels like the Swifts, being Linfield Swifts, are going to have to really
There's
step
going to
up
be
here.
kids play much the same as Cliftonville. There's going to be kids playing all year. The guy Chaplin has played a lot of football. He was playing for the Swifts last year in pre-season. There's been a lot of names where you're thinking they're going to see a fair bit of action here, and it just out of pure necessity. There he might do his usual trick of getting in a load of English and Scottish boys, but
I feel like you need it because you're clearly not in a position where you're able to pick up a player from a team below you. Is like you're just not in the mindset even to go, hey, Josh Ukek was doing something. Could you do something for us? Can we pick up somebody from Carrick or Ballymena at the team you're picking up? But like, you know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like, it's not the player you need, a Fapatu or a Healy or something. Like, you're not picking up players below you in the league. So then you're going for these pros. You want to go full time, and that's another thing another circle you have to square. Like realistically, is anybody saying that it is going to be so bad that, particularly based on maybe Offer going or Fitzpatrick being injured or something, do you really think they're going to drop out of the top four?
if there's a lot of not even if there's a lot of injuries, if there's a few big injuries, the big names, and Ballymena can get it together, then it's of course it's possible. Yeah, that would be the worry. But again, same as Glentoran, gotta get European football. And I wasn't the biggest fan of having to go through that playoff because it's just unnecessary stress you don't need going into your summer. But it's looking like it'll have to be that way again.
I have them fourth. I just think Glens and Coleraine and Larne are just better teams, and they're going to be more consistent. I think Linfield have got a lot of figuring out to do, and particularly at the top end of this division, you don't have a huge amount of leeway. So even if a flurry of players come through with talent or potential, there's just going to be a couple of weeks where it's gonna be difficult for them. I think they're gonna find particularly games away from home quite difficult because I think people are gonna sit in, and I don't know if they have the keys to unlock that.
I was thinking the other way. I think games at home are going to be pretty brutal this year. Season tickets are at an all-time low, stuff like that. There's it's not an enjoyable place to go and watch football when we're winning. Crowds are going to be way down. It's going to be toxic as per. If Bangor or Carrick or someone come and go 1-0 up at Windsor Park, I don't really back us to get out of a hole, but I've got us fourth as well. I think this is the first time I haven't had us win in the league. I think that would have been taking the mick a wee bit. but I'd love to be proved wrong, but I can't see it at all.
Something of a self-fulfilling prophecy with the Blues at the minute, where either you do well and everybody's happy, or fans are just waiting for it all to go wrong and go, see, I told you we weren't right. And that just doesn't feel right for anybody. It's a club who really needs to decide where we're going and how we're getting there, because it doesn't feel clear to anybody, and that lack of clarity, particularly to fans, is where a lot of this angst is coming from, and it's just feeding onto the pitch. Joe,
I also have them in fourth. Despite how negative it was there, I still think that's where they'll end up. And exactly what you're saying there, Peter. It almost feels like blame just keeps getting passed about to the point where, for like the last few years, David Healy's been linked with a move away, and there's always been a thing of
and
where
even of all years, this year's another one. Like,
exactly, but this time it's different in that Linfield fans were like, "Yes, go," and Shelburne, I believe he was linked with, were like, "We don't want them, not a chance." Where I don't think they've seen that before, so it's starting to impact him a bit now.
He's missed the
Whether
boat. He's missed
well,
the
whether it's his fault or whether it's the club's fault or who lays the blame here, he's definitely starting to feel it, as are the club.
the whole thing's just rudderless at the minute. There's no direction, as you say. There's no leadership. If we're gonna go part time, let's just go part time and have a good fist of it. The thing that
but
sums it
you're
up.
right. I think the part time thing is, it's not even a case of technically being part time over full time. It's saying we're not even in the position to sign players that we've just let go. Like, they're not even in a position to pay the kind of wages that Ballymena are paying, without going for the players like Coleraine and Lauren are going for, the McMenamins and Coopers. It's saying we're fighting with what? Cliftonville and Carrick for players. I almost think it's we need to like stick a pin in any of this talk about Linfield going part time, because it's not going anywhere. It's we need to see where they are now. And look, it must be clear, they could be the team that smell the roses in a couple of years if they're the teams that keep their belt tight. But the malaise that you're currently feeling is difficult. Wow, Linfield fourth all round, and below the Glens and others. And the hits just keep on coming. Once again, Ross Welsh, the floor is yours. Portadown, now Curryless Portadown, going into this season. How magic is this DJ effect going to be?
I will start by saying I still have not assigned a team to finish in 12th, but we'll see.
You're like a panto dame. It's
Oh no, I'm not. But no, they'll not finish 12th this year. Would be very funny if they did, if they got their own back on me, but I don't think they will. I think DJ is going to be a huge net positive compared to last year. I think he's been out of the game a little while, but that's one of the best Irish League managers of all time. He he seems to be all in. He doesn't seem to be picking up a paycheck. He seems to be, what he's painting the stands and he's weeding the grass and stuff. He seems to be
He's giving
all in
team
on the
talks
pro.
to youth teams.
Yeah,
Maybe
listen,
that's a regular thing, but you can see him beating his chest and going for it. He does seem to be quite central to this Portadown project this year.
well, he's waited. He's waited. I'm sure he said he had other job offers, and he seems to have liked this one. So I think the potential for the Ports this year is massive, certainly compared to where I've obviously thought the last couple of years. But yeah, I could see them. I can see them having a bit better of a go at it this year.
They were a team that I thought lacked goals last year. Josh Ukek leaving doesn't help. But outside of him and Stephen McCulloch going as well, who was a taller left back who get forward for them, like, they're one of these sides who have been trying to do their shopping in other areas, not exactly like looking for the Irish League players, and that could really bite them. Like, you look at the players they brought in: Reese Breen, Mickey Hewitt, both defenders. Matty Carson's back in the league again. You've got this guy Sean O'Mahony, who is a Leinster League wonder, they hope. Connor Falls is somebody who has had a bit of Irish League experience, but I mean, reports are quite mixed on him, and they've paid a fee for him. And then, how excited do you get on the YouTube highlights of Liam Jessup, who actually scored a goal for Gibraltar, and Dominic Dan Santos Martins? I don't know if there's a long way of saying that, but I'm sure David Jeffrey will say that every week. Joe, is this a team who's going to be fighting relegation all year?
No, I don't think so. I think David Jeffrey is too good of a manager for that, and this was a squad that I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't think they really had a plan or tactics last year, and they were fine. I think with a similar squad that he's freshened up. Obviously, I agree. I think McCulloch's going to be um a huge loss for them. Obviously, UK's going to be a loss, but he's also the likes of Shane McCartan and Jordan Gibson, older players leaving, and he's clearly bringing in some youth. So I think there's going to be a bit of a fresher feel to that team. I don't think they'll be battling relegation. I don't think they're going to blow people away either, though. I think it's going to be very much an obvious look that it's his first season with Portadown, strengthening things, getting a bit more solidified almost, and then maybe pushing on next year. If you look at the list of signings, it looks very similar. You could take those players and say Cliftonville signed these players, and you would not be surprised.
Totally. But in turn, I think you've hit on something that I felt last year about the games, and said it to each other last year, is that they were a team who you felt could do more, but often were the architects of their own downfall. Now, many teams are like that, but they've added, which is an area of the pitch I didn't think they needed a lot of additions, but clearly they view that differently. They've added big burly centre backs, and one of them is going to have to be a wing back. I've saw it's like tiny bits of highlights from all these friendlies, and one player who did seem to stand out, I think, is Hewitt. He seems like a big tall player rampaging down the left, so that seems to be their guy. I worry about them up front. I kind of like Connor Falls. I'm hearing chat of like Portadown maybe being the destination for Nathaniel Ferris if he was to leave the Glens. You sit there and go, well, they didn't exactly light the league on fire when they're at Glenavon. They had a good wee stretch for a couple of games, but in turn, he's the type of player that I think most teams would like to have in the throes of battle with 20 minutes to go in November. So I was worried about Portadown last year. I have concerns. I think they've got quite a wide range of outcomes where if some players hit or some players don't. They've got a nice floor because they have Alton Top, McKinnon, Divin Zamala has played a season and a half of Irish League football, and then these other guys coming up still have Chapman. So they've got a squad, but is it enough to excite? It depends if Liam Jessup is the next breakaway. Is he going to be that UKEC? They brought back Ahu Ubakan, who I think missed most of the year. Joe, I think I'm the high man, so I'm going to ask you to go first.
I have them in ninth.
I'll leave Ross for last. I have them sixth.
Wow. Wow.
I think because of their back line, I think that they are going to be a difficult... Like, they were better against team with the counter-attack. What they really struggled with, it felt like, was those teams in the same position as them. And I think if these players come in and do beef up that back, I think it will add a good 10 points to their overall total. They're going to have someone except him and Fife score the goals. But I think there's maybe one extra striker coming through. Like previous years, they'll probably be quite hot. They'll probably be quite cold. They'll need to keep up those shocks against the top sides. I've done a wee bit of research into some people's pre-seasons, and there seems to be hot and cold as well. I just think amongst them all, I think they might sneak a few results, and they'll just be the team that sits there. Once again, they could easily be ninth, easily be sixth. I've put them there, and I'm just going to have to live by it. Now, is it as bad as Port's 12th? Maybe. But Ross, The drums are rolling.
Guys, the people of Portadown, eighth place. Congratulations. Well
Wow.
done.
Oh, not even the low man on porch.
Well done. Well, listen, everybody who slagged me off last year, you clearly know where my DMs are, so you're more than welcome to say thank you this time. Eighth, I think there's clearly worse teams in the league. I, I don't fully hate. No, I do. I hate sixth, but I could see them seventh European playoff. You never.
That could come on. The difference between sixth and seventh could be a random win along the way against Bangor away from home. I get it. I do think it's probably maybe my boldest pick, but there's just something about it. I felt along the way they've probably got more bodies than others. Also, you've got my child Adam Toe there, which we all shouldn't forget. They haven't lost a huge amount, and all they probably need is one, even two of those players to kick on. Is it even close to fourth? No, but I think they could slip up above it all. Very different to last year. Saying that, you can see Ports just tripping over themselves, lacking maybe a bit of connectivity between midfield and attack. And I do think they need one more striker and maybe a wide man, but that could be Jessup. But we'll see. Okay, are we over the halfway point? We have to be. This has been going on for ages, but it's good. It's fine if it's long if it's good. Okay, we have next up Linfield 2025. How do we think Ballymena are going to do this year? Like we saw last year that they added a huge amount of players in January, and it didn't feel like it made them any better. But they've had the summer to work on it. At least all these Linfield players have worked with each other before full time. Lot of expectation, lot of, I wouldn't say hype around Ballymena, but we can say it now. If they're seventh, I think something's went wrong there. But you might be predicting something going wrong because what have we seen in the same way we're talking about Cruz? What have we seen from Oran Kearney's Ballymena to say that they are going across the season, they're going to get wins?
Not a lot as of yet. Have flattered to deceive under Kearney so far. But you're right in what you say. I think something has went seriously wrong if they
No.
are finishing seventh. I think you have to look at Kearney's job being on the line then with the amount of money and investment that's gone into them. I think they sort of have to be top six this year. We kind of hinted at this last year, that they needed to do well, and ultimately Jim Irvin lost his job. But and maybe unfairly, some people have said, but I think they have to be top six this year, or else what are they going to do? They've brought all these players in, and it won't have worked. What are you going to do?
You could argue they have even higher ambition in the long run. Maybe not exactly in, you might say, if last year was year one or year zero, this next year, I think it has to be about getting into the top six. But if people are counting at home, unless you have them finished in the top two, Joe, you think it is going to be a disappointing season
Well,
up at Warden
that's
Street?
what I was going to say. I think, well, clearly I will be the low man between the three of us. I like what they've done, but I've said it many times in this podcast as well when other teams have done it. I am always apprehensive when you're near signing a new starting 11. I think it's just so difficult to get that right, especially from the offset. We know how important it is in Irish League that you start a season well. And I just think it will take a bit of time for this team to gel. Even though they all played together with Linfield, I still think it will take a bit of time. There's clear class in there. And even I like the Linfield signings in that they're not in their 30s. You know, Archer and Allen, Walsh, they're all young players. And talking about bigger ambitions, I think that's a clear plan for the future. This isn't we're going to go and sign as many players just for next season. So I don't know if they'll be having, I say, realistic conversations, but I don't know if the conversations within Ballymena will be, if you don't get top six, there, as long as there's a clear path and improvement, that's okay. Um, Obviously, top six will be the goal, but I don't think his job will be at risk if he doesn't get it.
Like they have, you might say, quality. If you're talking about McKee, Allen, and others, Glynn even, Addis, Whiteside, but they have a bit of they have depth as well. Like Rakowski, is he going to be in this team all the time? Kennedy's still playing there. Like Edegan, Fallon signed for them. Where's Hood going to play? It's not always the best thing to have loads of players fighting for two positions, but they should be able to rotate and they could do pretty well. Like even forgetting players like McCallion and Toure.
Yeah, it's a very good squad, and I'm excited to see what Kearney can do with it. But I still just keep coming back to adding that many players in, getting them all to gel, keeping everyone happy, as you say, two players for one position. It's ideal, but when those two players are near level in terms of quality, it can be quite difficult then to almost pick your best side and keep that sort of enthusiasm throughout the squad.
Ross, with this summer now, and they were planning this for months in the lead up because all the chat around the pre contracts eventually became true. You might argue that come January it was tape over some leaks, trying to fix things and just trying to get a team that wasn't going to get caught up in any sort of relegation drama. That was fine in the end. It wasn't very entertaining, but it was fine. They're really are relying on McKee to take that step forward as a proper, exciting, like Irish League leading striker, and I think he has the ambition to do that himself. I just think looking at Ballymena, they've never found a system. They need a system this year. It needs to be clear who their starting lineup is so that they can, and obviously they're going to want to be changeable in the big moments, but this is a team, as you said at the start, with expectation. If you actually go Linfield 11 versus Ballymena 11, it it could be tricky to see how many Linfield players were like. I don't know if you would say confidently, hand on heart, right now before going through it, that Linfield would have the majority there between their starting lineups now, between both of them this season. I've got them as fifth. Like I do think that it might not be pretty. They might have to have difficult patches, but I think ultimately they will be able to find their footing and come whatever it is, April time, I think they will have got enough points that they are the best of the rest.
Yeah, I agree. I've got them fifth as well. I think they just kind of have to be with the money that's been spent and the ambition with the players they've brought in. I think it kind of has
Do you think
to be a good
do you
team.
think Ballymena's success is going to potentially be an additional factor, additional heat on how Linfield are going this season because you have so many players away from the club where legitimately if all of a sudden Allen looks like a world beater, Walsh is one of the better keepers in the league, McKee's getting hat tricks on a bi-weekly basis, are Linfield fans going to go, they were playing for us last year?
100%. And somebody in the Niffle office has had a good laugh putting first game of the season, Linfield Ballymena. Like that's just good stuff. That's a good bit. And if Ballymena win that game, immediately they're looking good. And as you say, the Linfield faithful are saying, here, literally, here's what you could have had. Do you know what I mean? So, uh, you're right in what you say. It will ramp up the heat, but I don't think Ballymena will be too focused on that. They'll be focused on doing their own thing. If they manage to finish above Linfield, then that's a whole different discussion. But I just can't quite see that at the minute. Fifth.
I've had my fingers singed before. I think I said they were going to be sixth last year and they were nowhere near it. So there's there's a lot riding on the fact that they've got big names. Can they be a big time club? Massive litmus test ahead of us. Joe, before we go, where's the Sky Blues?
As I say, I'm the low man, so I have them in seventh.
Seventh. Just saying, Cliftonville above them. That might be some shoehorning there. Okay, we are getting through them all, and we are yet to have our league winner. Will it be the next team? It's Bangor.
Here's the big shock.
Do you think they're going to take the next step next year and go for the title?
You never know. There's been bigger upsets, hasn't there?
Well, look, their seagull has lost weight in their badge this year, and in a similar fashion, positive feelings around their fortunes this year are probably on the lower end as well. We talk about teams who come up and have a great season, great first season in the league, being a bit of a trend. What we also should say is that trend then continues outside of Portadown a couple of years ago with a second season syndrome and relegation. This Bangor side, I think, really lost their way come the end of last year, which is unsurprising, and their lack of adding bodies is a real concern.
Yeah, that sums it up perfectly, Peter. I mean, the second season syndrome started in like January for
Yeah.
them. Almost they were safe, and at that point they just thought, well, we'll just take the foot off now, and it just has been a downward trend since then, and it looks like it's going to continue to be. Like there's some players in that squad I like. Obviously, Harry Lynch. I'm not exactly being hipster with that one. I quite like Reece Neal. Ben Arthur's obviously, if he's going to be playing, I don't think he's played yet in pre-season. Kushney I quite like, but they haven't really added anything special. McCulloch, yes, that's about it, really, isn't it? I mean, it's not
It's a
a
nice
great.
player, but doesn't fix some of their real
No,
issues. Like they would
yeah,
dig
exactly.
in and they would hold firm and they would get those victories along the way, particularly early in the season. But they got found out, lost their mojo, and I don't know across 38 games if they're really going to beat out many of the other sides. Like, it's clear this direction of travel. I have them as 12th, and it's not just because of that trend. I just think overall, from a squad point of view, there isn't enough quality, there isn't enough bodies, and in 2026, the Irish League's tough.
It is.
Look at
Uh,
Glenavon last year. You might argue Glenavon might have a better squad based on who they've brought in, and it's not like they're bringing in superstars. They're thin on the ground.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that. I was thinking some of the guys Glenavon have brought in would have really improved this team, and whether they didn't fancy them or they just haven't acted quick enough, I don't know. But as you have said, there's not much coming through the door. No, they got their business done really early last season, and they were safe from Christmas time, basically. It'd be some job to do it again. Their first five games are pretty favourable, barring Larne on the first day. So if they want to jump out into a bit of a lead on the teams around them, maybe that's their path to safety. But I just can't see it. I have them finishing rock bottom as well.
Is it going to be a tough season for Bangor?
Definitely. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be very enjoyable at all. I think the McCulloch signing shows is just going to be same business, and it's not going to improve whatsoever. I also have them in 12th.
I think they could really benefit from some of those players just falling through the traps. I think they are a team who could really benefit, particularly near the final hours, days of the window, of younger players just shaking out and finding a home in Bangor. Like Leafy did a great job getting them there. I'm really not criticizing them that much for how they've approached this summer. Like, they're one of many clubs who's saying, oh, this is so tough trying to find players, trying to attract them to our club, and the difficulties in the finances of it all. And um, I'm sure they will believe that they've got enough about them and they've got enough fight and determination to do it. Hey, who's to say that they can't drag in a Limavady, they can't drag in a Crusaders, but you take out Ben Arthur's, who realistically outside of people like us are going, oh, Kushney, Jay Boyd, Michael Morgan, etc. So maybe there's a few more dice rolls for them that could help them get there, but we've found more than ever that these squads feel less the heat, they feel the chill factor along the way, and injuries will come and poor form will come, and It's like all the chips are on Ben Arthur's, and there's a chance he may not be playing for them this year, or wasn't going to play for them this year. So, hey, someone has to finish 12th. Sorry, Bangor fans. Go shout at us somewhere else.
I think we've all damned them there, but is there an aspect in their
Of
defense
course.
that Limavadi's the shiny new toy?
Uh,
Or are they that much better than Bangor? Do you know what I mean? In my head, I'm thinking,
Probably.
yes, they are, but if I actually sit and think about it, they're probably a lot more even than that.
People know the proposition of Bangor. Like, we've seen every single time with these teams that have fallen off in the second year. What we saw before all this happening was a difficult end of the season. A bright start, difficult end. So we can only base on what we saw before. It would take some turnaround. It would take a player going on an absolute tear elsewhere. But yeah, I agree with you. But in turn, look at that Limavady side. Even look at the Cruise side. I think Cruise are more likely to get caught than Limavady, because Limavady will have just so much more gusto, I would say. You talk about those youth players. Of course, Bangor have Lynch, and we all like Neil, etc. But they just haven't added the experience that I think they needed. And we haven't seen. Sometimes teams in their position would bring in unearthed gems from below, even that hasn't happened. So, crushing, I appreciate it, but we move on. And we go to Coleraine. I genuinely had someone message me saying that they think that Colerane's second 11 would have a strong chance of finishing in the top four. Now, that doesn't really matter. You need one squad to finish top. And I know everybody's already said clearly it's between Coleraine and Larne. I think the bookies say that. I think other people outside of us have said that. The North Coasticos, if we call them, rather than the Galacticos, they have a team. They had a team last year. We saw them go on a mega run at the end. They ran out of road, did Coleraine, and we thought if they keep that up, they're going to do business next year. I think they were favourites for the league. Well, I predicted them to win the league last year. That didn't happen, which many people thought that they were a year too early. We're a year into this. They've seen success. They've made it work. They are frightening up top. At the back, a few questions. But they have quality on the ball. They've got depth. They've got speed. And I think we're going to see plenty of games over within the first 30 minutes next year. McMenamin is a statement of intent. Cooper will be the one that everyone will remember years from now. And maybe it'll take a while for McMenamin to get himself healthy again. He may be a step behind he was a couple of years ago, but they don't need him to be one of the best Irish League players of the last 10 years. They need a quality professional player, and they're expecting that from him, and he is going to ruin many a non-bandsider day this year. Do you think they're the favourites, Joe?
Yes, I do.
Doesn't mean you think you're going to win, but
First off, good to know Rory Higgins is messaging you before the season. That's good to know. I completely agree. I think they are the favourites. They've done, like, going back to what we were talking about with Ballymena, they've already got through that period of buying a load of players. This year, obviously, they've strengthened their squad again, but with not a huge amount of them, and their previous signings are now bedded in. Last season, when I was predicting them, I said it was just a season too early, second, and they'll push on. And I think the end of last season and the Irish Cup showed things are starting to click. That consistency is starting to come in. They've clearly got a plan. Now they've really got depth. I think losing the likes of Dunn and stuff, they probably will feel, as you say, the defense is probably where there's more question marks. But I think they kind of showed last year their idea is to go out there and score more goals than you. They don't really care if they're going to concede as long as they're scoring more. And I mean, the quality that they have in that team, I know we've talked about patching God knows how many times. McMenamin coming in, it's just such a strong, exciting squad. Joel Cooper, Shevlin as well. Like, these are all players that deserve to be in a team that wins the league. And I think this year, I think they will.
Mark Coyle being injured for the season, that's a blow. It's maybe a smudge on the crystal chandelier, but it's a smudge all the same.
Yeah, it's a shame, but realistically, there's still four boys ready to stand in front of where he was going to stand and set up goals or score goals. So I don't think it'll be a season defining miss. It obviously would have been nicer to have him there, but listen, these guys are the bookies' favourites. They're nearly even money, which is crazy to win a league. So it's it's hard to look past them, and it's almost at the point of I kind of have to win the league this year. I think the expectations are there that they really have to do it.
Yeah, like not to be over the top, but they've went out and they're paying for McManaman to leave Scottish top flight football. He's had his difficulties with injuries, but that isn't happening unless you want to win the league. Now, I think they've been very unlucky in Europe. It would have been interesting to see if they had had a proper go against a team that isn't Helsinki. That's been tough. Maybe the result could have been slightly less one sided, but they give it a go. But week in, week out, Irish League football, Shevlin, McMenamin, Cooper, Wiley, Patching. It maybe isn't that level at the back, but I don't know if that's going to be an issue. I'm going to push back here. I've had someone very, very senior within Irish League football say to me that they don't think Colerane's going to do it. They think this defence is being ignored and that at evens, not a chance. So they're not the only ones. That is obviously suggesting that I am going double dip. I am going Coleraine. I just think we've seen that the most important thing to winning this league is consistently winning and consistently outscoring other teams, and they shouldn't have a problem. I think also what people are forgetting is that yeah, their back line might be a bit dodgy, but who are they scared of? Like genuinely outside of the other top four sides, who are they scared of?
I would argue there's not a single team in the league is going to go to the Coleraine Showgrounds and attack and try to win. I think their closest competitor is Larne, and I think Larne will be happy to sit and take a point. Maybe the only team to do that will maybe be the Glens, but it doesn't really matter. They've replaced Chili D, our friend and everyone's friend, with Aidan Wilson, who hasn't got a great injury record, but there's still options back there if they can sort the goalkeeping thing out, if they can sort of steady the ship there. I, I think it's fine. I think the defense is
Yeah, it
fine.
is just probably fine.
Yeah, it'll do for what they need. It'll do.
Okay, so then Ross, are you also agreeing with us that they're champions this year?
No,
Wow!
no.
Mixing it up. Why?
It's nothing on Korean. I don't know why, to be honest. I know I'm on here to provide a bit of analysis and thought and opinion, but it's just my stomach, my gut feeling going the Ember Reds again.
Okay, let's just go straight to the Inverreds. Don't care, not even going to the bowl. They taught us a lesson last year, didn't they? They aren't gone. They aren't out already. We just decided, boring old Larn, they finally got caught. The season previous, the era of Lynch is over. And despite, and this is a rarity, a team that changes manager winning the league, especially so early on, rarely goes on and does that. They ate their porridge and consume their vegetables. And you might say that they're probably weaker compared to last year because there's no Ryan and a few others there, but they still are going to be a tough cookie to crack and will more than likely sweep away the Limavadis and the Bangers and Crews, etc. And no other team is better in those big time top six, usually Friday night, Tuesday night games, quite like Larne. And you've got to admit, if you're sitting here banging the drum for Larne to be champions once again, which obviously that's what you're doing, Ross, you're saying, yeah, they might not thump Portadown in the same way that Coleraine are, but they are going to catch out Linfield, the Glens, Coleraine, you might even include Ballymena, in ways that Coleraine are going to be conceding a last minute corner. And and it's consistency over flair.
Yeah, the Lauren way, as it has been the last load of years. As you say, you back both the teams to beat all the lower teams. They're probably going to pick up similar results against the Glens and the Blues, and then it just becomes a straight shootout between the two. And I just back Lauren to beat Coleraine when they're playing each other in a 1v1. They've already done it on penalties this season, Charity Shield, whatever, it doesn't really count. But just big games, big players, that Lauren team's full of them. They've been there, done that. I just, I, I fancy them to do it. There's something my gut tells me. Big Sam McClelland, who they've got at the back, what a player. UK's going to be a nice wee piece, as if they don't have enough attackers already. Yeah,
Kevin
you
O'Hara is
know,
a striker. Like, one of the more interesting things with Lauren is where do their reserve strikers go? Because everybody's looking around saying, "Where's all the Irish League strikers?"
they're keeping them
They're on the
all.
bench at Lauren. They're O'Connor, they're McGee, they're
Every
O'Neill,
year to the end
perhaps.
of time, we'll be like, oh, if Team X, who are going to finish 10th, can pick up Benji McGee or Paul O'Neill. And
McGee,
unfortunately, guys,
McKendry,
you just won't
perhaps.
because
Yeah,
they like to bring on three new attackers on 70 minutes against tired legs and win games that way. It's the fact that you can't, even Coleraine with all their attacking options, on the day, it's going to be, if they're all fit, Cooper, Shevlin, McMenamin. Whereas Lauren, you can just tinker with that front line and you just don't know exactly what you're coming up against. The loss Andy Ryan for sure, big. He scored half goals.
yeah, but
Yeah,
he
but
was a
a big
cameo,
one.
a very
Yep.
effective
But
cameo. But yeah,
I fancy them. They've got the youth coming through as well. Another Lauren juggernaut this year, I think.
that is one factor. I think what maybe we're also forgetting is that they have experience. They've got the best keeper in the league in Ferguson. I would say that players like Cosgrove and Sean Graham are still better than what Coleraine have on offer. And they can break people down. They might not have the same pure excitement that some of the Coleraine midfielders have, but McAneff, Sloan, Doherty, even Miller, I don't know how much role he'll play, but I can see where you're coming from. There's an opportunity here that actually this league could be quite exciting between Lauren and Coleraine.
I think this is what makes Irish League so exciting. You've got two teams that I don't think either of us could say this team's definitely going to win, but it's clearly between these two, and they couldn't be more different. You've got the heavy metal style versus the the calculated team, and either one could go and do it, and they'll do it in very different ways. The thing I think will lead into Lauren here is what happens with Europe, and it might not have a huge impact. Likely it will though if they get as far as groups, um, which will then come back for obviously in Colerane's favour. But to Ross's point, I do probably think when it comes to the head to heads, Lauren will win because they'll have that sort of calculated, concise, and tight play as opposed to that heavy metal that Coleraine have. But I just think as tight as it will be of a league, I think Coleraine will be the ones to push on.
I'm wavering. I genuinely am wavering now because you mentioned Europe and you try and pin the idea of Europe and they've got a long way to go. They're not getting through in the Champions League, but they have got two bites of the cherry now. And it might be a situation where they've got Europe well in the bag. And if they do that, they are more equipped. Yeah, last time they ran out of steam. It was their downfall, no doubt. However, if they do get Europe, what we might need to think about is and consider this squad's not cheap. All right, it's constructed and it's been meticulously put together, and there is a bill due. All right, but also if they get in Europe, there's a chance they spend. I don't think they really did that last time. I think they were just reeling from getting there and trying to see how it feels. But there's an opportunity here for them to go out and really get players and try and attack Europe better. Cart before the horse here. There's genuine opportunity for Europe to be a benefit rather than a negative. I'm still gonna have to stick with Coleraine, but I kind of wish I picked Lauren. But I'd rather win. I have yet to get a league champion, so I'd rather not zig while everybody else zags. But you know what? This could be the making of your Ross. I think one of us is going to predict the champions this year.
If one of us doesn't, that's bonkers, and I'll either be a very happy man because Linfield have won it, or I'll never be on this podcast again because Glentoran have won it. So
I tell you, the more we talk about it, the more we look at these squads. I genuinely think that, look, we all could be getting way too excited about Ballymena, but I also think we could be sleeping on them. We actually could be seeing a situation where we're already talking about the big two, and Coleraine and Larne are the big two. Now they're the money bags too. They're the investment too. And not saying Glentoran haven't got cash or Ballymena haven't got cash, but they're another level, and they've actually been proven to be more savvier than the other teams. But I wonder, when we look back at this, is the one thing we missed is that it wasn't a top four, it was a top five, and that it was, sorry Joe, it was Lauren and Coleraine all along, and Ballymena, Linfield, and Glentoran are constantly swapping places, landing blows on each other. I'm not ready to predict that just yet. I do think there'll be a dotted line between Linfield and Ballymena. Linfield and Ballymena are going to be almost same rivals, I think, to Larne and Coleraine. But there's a strong chance we see this top four become a top five and Ballymena really take a step forward. But there's a long way to go. We end with Carrick, who themselves have got investment, but we don't see them being title challengers. They looked so poor at the start of last season and ended so well to the point that they were a team that Ross Welsh was saying, oh God, I really don't want to face them in a playoff. They clicked together, but there's echoes there of, yeah, but they can't keep trucking forever. The wheels have to come off. Can they stay healthy? Can the big time players stay healthy? Because if you take their best 11, they do have something that really could be in the top six, genuinely. And they were close to it there if they just had a bit more thrust at the end. But Heatley's back for another year. So much relying on Gibson. Lecky, you're lucky if you're getting 28 games from him in a season for getting all the cup games. But they add in O'Connor. Here comes Nettis Maculitis again. They've got a back line who don't need to be mobile because they just swat things away. Add in experience of Forsyth is still a player who can get about and be the gem that other people overlook. Absolutely. But what does that mean amongst it? I think they're a better side than Dungannon. And they use their home patch nicely to their advantage. But that bench is going to be their downfall eventually.
I agree. Yeah, the bench is a clear issue, as with an aging squad. It's not a squad that massively excites me, and neither are Carrick and how they play. But I mean, they won't care. That's not what they're there to do. I do quite like the addition of Forsyth. O'Connor obviously didn't really shine at Ballymena the way maybe expected him to. He'll want to be,
Yeah, he's got a bit of a reclamation project on his
yeah,
hands.
big time, which is exactly what Baxter will be saying to him, and it's what he'll need. It Look, Carrick have already brought a Crusaders legend out of retirement. I wouldn't massively be surprised if Owens finds himself at Carrick at
No,
the start of the
no,
season.
no, not
No,
happening.
I
Come
would
on.
honestly. There's my bold take that he will come back. But I think for Carrick, I was a bit surprised at how high up they finished last year. I don't think they'll be just as good. I think they'll be solid enough. They'll not really be worried. But I do have probably them and Ports fighting against each other.
I think they're Lauren of the bottom half.
I see it very different from what you think.
Unexciting, get goals, firm at the back, rarely wobble, but a spate of injuries, and it is tears. It is. I told you so.
Yeah,
and it's not like that's a hugely unlikely scenario. with the age and stuff we've talked about. I don't know. I like the recruitment. It's definitely quality over quantity, but I like the three they've brought in. Hastings a bit of young blood up there. When, as you say, Lecky's not going to be fit for every game. Nadas, huge fan of Michaelitis. So good to have him back. And that, Danny Gibson, decent centre forward. He'll get you a few goals this year. So I think you're right in what you say. They will try to boss the bottom six again and sort of see what they can pinch off the bigger teams. But as you both said, the squad's a bit thin. Where do you go sort of with any injuries which are probably going to happen, or even rotation requirements?
Yeah, they went on good runs last year, and that helped beef up things. It's hard to repeat the trick, but Dungannon repeated it, so why can't Carrick? I feel like a bit of the high man now, saying that they are going to finish seventh. I may be going, I've done the Swifts a wee bit dirty there. But as we said, much of a muchness. I think they'll be hard to beat, opposed to being thrilling up top. But in turn, they have strikers and Lecky, Gibson, Heatley, O'Connor if he gets rocking and rolling. That few others have, so they'll cause trouble.
I think they will, yeah. I think that's exactly it. They'll be hard to beat, and not trying to be funny, they will be like a Crusaders of old. You know what I mean? That's exactly what they're going for, and you can't really blame them. For me, I think they'll finish eighth, but I think they will be, as I say, fighting with Ports for that sort of eighth and ninth position.
Ross,
I'll have to apologise to Portadown fans. I misread my notes earlier. I've got Carrick finishing eighth and Ports ninth. But as you have said, it is all just pick wherever you want in that little cluster.
so to avoid confusion, Ross, what is your 12 from bottom to top?
So I've got Bangor finishing bottom, Limavady in 11th, 10th is Crusaders, ninth Portadown, 8th is Carrick Rangers, 7th Dungannon Swifts, 6th Cliftonville, 5th is Ballymena United, 4th Linfield, Glentoran, Coleraine, and then Larne to win it.
Joseph?
Yep, for myself, I've got Bangor in 12th, and Crusaders, Limavady, Portadown, Carrick, Ballymena, Cliftonville in 6th, then Dungannon, Linfield, Glentoran, Larne, and Coleraine winning it.
For me, Bangor 12th, Cruise in 11th, Limavady slipping ahead, getting 10th. A downfall for the Swifts in ninth, Cliftonville in 8th, Carrick getting 7th, Portadown up in 6th, Ballymena in 5th, Linfield 4th, Glens 3rd, Larne 2nd, and Coleraine winning it all.
How interesting is that
It's
fifth and ninth
absolutely,
position? It's
and it really
incredible.
is. And now I'm sitting there going, ooh, do I want to sneak Ballymena higher? Like it's, in this type of situation, don't be too bold, but don't be too conservative either. As always, there will be plenty of opinions, and we're lucky if just the one person agrees with any of us. I've almost forgotten, boys. I'm supposed to go through the games that are happening this week, and we talk and we predict. We'll not spend a huge amount of time because we've talked about every team at length, and I appreciate you didn't talk about this sign, didn't talk about that, you forgot about this. Move on, grow up. But Irish League football is back, and it starts on Friday night, and it starts at Solitude. North Belfast Derby to kick things off. Would have preferred the Linfield Ballymena game, if I'm being honest, but this should be grand as well. I tell you, Joe, this could be a difficult watch, but it's actually, I don't think, the worst game for both these teams to get motivated and attack the season.
I completely agree. Yeah, it's one that both teams, for both their pride and the season, will need to win. Happy enough that it's at home. We've obviously had a bit more luck with Crusaders over the last few years. Not Boxing Day, but aside from that, we've probably had their number a wee tiny bit. Crusaders will come out massively swinging with how last season finished and how we've chatted about them today. I think it's huge for Cliftonville as well. I again red tinted glasses, but I think it'll be comfortable enough for us. I'm going to say 2-0.
I think it will be as well. Cliftonville should probably have that poise to pass it around, take that around that naive Cruise side, and particularly if you take the lead, I don't know if Crusaders have enough, particularly on a Friday night, to go through the gears and take you down. I think you could really catch them on the break, and this is maybe a. I'm also going to go 2-0, but it could be a 3-1.
Yeah, I was thinking 3-1 myself, actually. I think both teams will fancy their chances. I think Crusaders will be backing themselves to spring a bit of a surprise.
I think need to come out of the traps. Like if there's roads to victory for the Crews, it's a goal in the first 20 minutes.
Yep, get up at them straight away.
Like I don't
And then
think I don't think Cliftonville will like a high press.
no, especially all the young team and stuff. A lot of pressure. They know they're going to have to
No,
carry the mantle for the year. Much in the same way, Crusaders will be thinking if we can get a win here, we'll maybe be taken a little bit more seriously going forward. But I just think Cliftonville will have too much on the night 3-1.
We move to Saturday, Carrick Rangers against Portadown. Strangely, I think this could be a bit of a back and forward game. You might even see the first red card of the season. I'm going 2-2. I don't think this is going to be a good day for defences.
I have it a draw as well. I'm going to say 1-1. I think it'll be yeah, as you say, a bit of a feisty one, but maybe a bit less scoring.
I slightly fancy Carrick for this one just purely because they're at home. I'm going 2-1, but if you told me it was 2-1 the other way, I could absolutely see that as well. But I'm just edging Carrick just because it's at Taylor's Avenue.
I feel like this game opens every season. Dungannon Swifts against Coleraine. How nailed on is Dungannon Swifts scoring an early goal and it being the first moments of panic amongst everybody throughout the league saying, oh, maybe this Coleraine team isn't that good. And then roaring back and winning 4-1 with two goals in the last 10 minutes.
Dungannon will get the first goal. They'll go back to the main commentary, and then by the next time they go back to Stanmore Park, it'll be 3-1 to Coleraine, and it'll finish that way. I just think Coleraine will have far too much for them. We saw Dungannon at the start of last season, not a good start at all. I just think any point of the season, Coleraine have too much, but especially first day of the season, they'll be wanting to sort of make their mark. So a nice wide Coleraine win there.
Completely agree. I think it's going to be no doubt Dungannon score for me. But I think it's probably going to be the high scoring game of the weekend. I'm going to say 5-2 to Coleraine.
Cue Rodney after the game saying, "We just switched off after the goal, and you can't do that against this Korean team, full time players." Glens against Limavady. This screams that Bangor Cliftonville game at the start of last year. I don't know if it helps the Glens that it's at the Oval. I think this is 0-0 after 45 minutes, and I think it's going to be a tetchy 1-0 to the Glens, where everybody's saying there's a lot more on that Limavady side, but I still think Glens are getting a result. 1-0.
I think it'll be a nice solid 2-0 for the Glens. Not really having to get out of second, third gear, just looking good value for a 2-0. If this was the Friday night game, I can be talking more into a shock, but I just think the Glens will have too much. There's no attention on the game. Nice, comfortable 2-0.
Yeah, I agree. I think a 2-0 and then Glentoran fans coming away saying we're winning the league this year. Getting ahead.
And we wrap up the weekend because Lawn are doing that European thing. And we go to. Do we have a name for this game just yet? It's the Walshaw. It's the Alan Arkeny. It's Linfield against Ballymena United. As we alluded to earlier, there feels like there's a lot more on the line than just 3 points here. There's how your season starts. That's for everybody. But there's momentum boost to whoever can get anything from this, which screams 1-1. And it's why I'm going to go for it. But a victory here, especially for Ballymena, and you just feel that hypometer just up and up ever so slightly.
For me, this feels like it should be one of the more interesting games of the weekend. I think it will be in terms of the result. All my other predictions, I've probably gone with the favourites. On this one, I'm going to go with Ballymena, one
I
0
see Ross look at you saying, but Ballymena are the favourites.
They are. But my head says a draw, but I just think for any hope of me having a half enjoyable season, I'll go 2-1 to Linfield, current Linfield.
See, I think the result will be fun. I don't know if the game will be, particularly because it's that 3 o'clock at Windsor Park. But maybe a big crowd. Maybe the fact that this Ballymena team needs to still figure out who they are. But if we all remember last year, that's what we were saying about Coleraine, and they were the team that was able to get a late victory against Larne. But an intriguing start all the same. I do want to reference the fact that this is the start of the fifth series of Kick a Match. It feels really weird. It does feel like it was genuinely only yesterday Michael Clark was sitting opposite me in my living room and I was going to start off on this weird new adventure talking about Irish League football every week, and it literally has been built just week by week by week by week. And in that time we joke about things changing and not changing, but I do want to reference overall just the media landscape. And look, I'm just some amateur guy, all right, with a computer in a spare room chatting to some brilliant, passionate fans and journalists like yourselves every week. But I'm very well aware that at the minute I am the only Irish League podcast that isn't affiliated with a club. But that wasn't the case a couple of years ago. And I also know that media is changing, where like you guys have always been doing stuff on social media, your video content, that there's so many other content makers who tweet out news or they upload on Instagram or they do TikTok. And I think what I'm trying to reference is what is here and now isn't always guaranteed. And I want to give a big shout out to all those people who create content for the Irish League, because no one's coming around giving them dollar for it. No one's coming around going, here's great access for it. They do it because they love it. And we have seen things that we really enjoy within the Irish League come and go. And I don't want to sit here and start referencing Twitter accounts and TikTok accounts or Instagram accounts, because there's going to be one that, as a fan, will mean a lot to those people. They're like, oh, why didn't he mention this or why didn't he do that? But I think what I'm saying is kudos to them, because this is a grind at times. It's great fun. It's amazing. But it's not always going to be around. What I'm also saying is credit to you guys, because I don't think following the league would be as fun without those independent voices. And there's new ones popping up all the time. And if there's people out there thinking, you know what, I don't know if posting news or results or pictures or anything, if I can really do it for another season, I hear you. I get it. But when it comes truly to the grind in October and January and February, it's brilliant. And I think one of the best things about the Irish League is those diversity of voices, and that it's such a place for brilliant conversation and crack all the time. We can be a bit too snarky for our own good, but it's still always good crack, I think.
Without a doubt, Peter. Yeah, it's a great community, not only in terms of, as you say, people who are creating content, but also the people who are following along. And as you're saying, they're talking about accounts and other, podcasts or whatever. Everyone listening to this, I think, probably thought of someone there, and it's great that those people are going and doing all the work that they're doing. As you say, not getting paid for it. It is just a bit of fun on the side, but the fact that there clearly is a desire for it out there is great to see, and it's great for Irish League in terms of not only growing the professionalism on the pitch. I think there's a huge area outside of it as well to grow.
What football media means in 2026 is very different to what it meant in 2020, 2015. And the last podcast people would have heard from myself was an interview with Michael Clark, who's away there doing great things in England and following his dream. And I think the next person that we view as breaking through and being a Michael Clark style figure, we're going to look back and go, that all started from a TikTok account. That all started from Twitter. So give it a go. Try it. It's scary up until the point that it's not. Big up to you guys. But also, I would say, be kind and support your friendly local Irish League social media account, because it makes this league so much better, I think.
Definitely, and even the people you meet, this wee trio would never have been a thing if Irish League
Totally.
football didn't exist. I already knew Joseph, but we'd have felt fallen out long ago if it wasn't the Irish League keeping the marriage together. So, and then obviously the addition of Mr. Cinnamon. So give it a go. If you're worried nobody's going to watch it, nobody's definitely watching you now without posting. So give it a bash and see what happens.
Fellas, we're back at it. My summer sabbatical is over, and I return to weekly podcasts to my wife's chagrin. Here we are again, and to remind everybody, thank you very much for listening. And if we still have a league, we still have a podcast, we'll be back at the end of the year to review it all, just like we have for the past 4 years.
Great to be back, Peter.
Fellas, thanks for the live show. Until next time, cheerio.
Thanks for having us, Peter.